Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to the Fishing Education's Trout in the City virtual seminar. Tonight we've got a little bit of a panel, not much of a panel tonight, but we got a little bit of a panel going on. Joining us, we have Clint Coleman with our Family and Community Fishing Program, Jeff Smith with Leland Lures and Trout Magnet, Crappie Magnet, myself, James Davidson with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's Fishing Education Program and Fishing in the Natural State Program. So what I want to do is start off doing some introductions, let each person tell a little bit about themselves. And what we'll do is we'll start with Jeff and let him tell a little bit about what he does.
My name is Jeff Smith, live in Searcy, Arkansas, where me and my family live, and enjoy this amazing trout fishery that we have here in Arkansas. I think we have some of the best trout fishing in the world. And so we live here for a couple of reasons. We love this area and love the community. And one of the big draws for us is trout fishing. My wife works at Harding University. I got 2 children here, and we just love this area and love to trout fish. What I do is I work with Leland's Lures. We create products for trout fishing and crappie fishing. Most of you, if you know our products, know the Trout Magnet, which has been around for about 25 to 30 years now. And the products that go with it, we make different types of fishing stuff for trout. We have a trout guide service called Sword Lip 'em All Guide Service. So we're all about trout and how to catch them. And so there's very few things I could be on a panel about to help, but this might be one of them, I think, to help a little bit. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Clint, you want to tell a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Just a little bit. Clint Coleman with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's Community Fishing Program. Our program stocks ponds statewide. We do brim, bass, and catfish, but right now with the weather turning, it's trout season. So this is a great opportunity for our program to get out there and start promoting fishing in the natural state, getting outside, enjoying trout fishing. And one of the great things that Jeff maybe didn't mention is he is such a great supporter of our program that when we do our tag promo, which we talk about later, he is a great supporter and sponsor of that. And I just want to thank him for that off the top. We're going to have a good time tonight. I'm looking forward to talking and spreading the word about game and fish. Oh, and one more thing about myself. Got 33 years and 8 months in, so y'all better talk fast.
Mr. Short Time. We're gonna quit calling you old school and start calling you Short Time, Clint.
No, I'm old school, baby, all the way.
And like I said a while ago, my name's James Davidson. I go by Bo most of the time. I work with the Fishing Education Program and mainly with the Fishing in the Natural State Program that deals with schools and such. Our primary objectives in both programs, though, is to teach people how to fish, different methods or going species specific and what have you, to where we can get people better educated and help make them more successful when they're out there to catch fish. Mr. Steve, he's joined me on Steve's iPad. Unmute yourself, Steve. Miss Tara, do you know how to unmute an iPad?
I'm trying. The first way I tried did not work. All I can do is ask him.
While we're waiting for Mr. Steve, Steve Joseph to get unmuted over there, ladies and gentlemen, as we go throughout the night, you come up with questions or what have you, please put it inside your chat, or you can either send it directly to me or Miss Tara, or you can set it up where everyone can see. There'll be a couple of links placed in as the night goes by. And in order to save those links, down there where your chat area is, you'll see 3 dots sitting horizontal. You tap on those 3 dots and you'll see save chat. It'll save it to a folder on your computer for you. Give me just a second. We're trying to get you in there.
I've done the ask to unmute. It doesn't give me it might,
Well,
I don't know. Did it give you the option to unmute him?
no.
No.
We'll continue on though until he can figure out how to get his unmuted. To tell you a little bit about Mr. Steve Joseph, he works with a great organization right now, the Mayfly Project, and he helps foster children be able to adapt to fly fishing and what have you, giving them something extra to do to help take their mind off some things and give them a little bit more enjoyment in their life. Clint, let's go back to you.
Okay.
Talk to us a little bit. Tell us what is the Family and Community Fishing Program? What are a couple of your large events?
Alrighty. The community fishing program, the inception was to stock locations to encourage young children, say 4th grade and up, say 10 years old. But it's changed over the years of where it is a family and community type situation where we're encouraging all of that family time, kid time, Mimo and Peepaw time. And we stock over 50 locations solidly with bass, brim, catfish, and trout, as I said earlier. To encourage people to get out there, we have sponsorship or collaborations with other fishing enthusiasts that will have derbies. A lot of that goes through the ARE or FINS program, Fishing Education program. But we work collaboratively to make things easier, better, and more community outreach and involvement. To do that, we'll stock locations, but to make it get even bigger and better, we start utilizing working with our collaboration of people to do larger events. We've had events anywhere from 50 that have now morphed up to be anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000. We hadn't got that big with trout yet. A lot of that big fishing is with catfish, but we're trying to push trout now. We have events like the Big Catch with catfish. We have events that are coming up in December up in Russellville that with the Caddis Fly Group pushing trout fishing. And we're going to have some more events in January around the state near our nature centers, producing more avid anglers to go fishing at locations for trout. These events have really been big by using our Facebook or all of our media outreach to encourage everybody to tag them on their Facebook, Instagram type situations, or even television and radio. But one of the main things is just to keep the word out there that we're coming and stocking locations. And as an old adage has always been, if you stock it, they will come. But you got to tell them when you're doing it too. So, and that's always after the fact, after the pond's been stocked. And that'll be getting started here actually next week. So this Zoom meeting today is perfect. That started next week. I'd almost say between Wednesday and Friday of next week, the first round of trout will be out and it'll be on and popping. It'll be crazy. So you guys get ready for next week. The hotline will be up, the webpage will be updated, just to encourage you guys to get outside and enjoy trout fishing in the state of Arkansas.
You done talked a little bit about Clint, about what we stock. When do we start stocking these trout?
The trout will actually start next week. We give them a week's window to stock, starting from Monday until Friday of next week before Thanksgiving. So with the break coming up, it'll be really nice that you can be out for Thanksgiving week or that weekend and be able to, once you finish eating, your big dinner, you want to get outside and go out and go fishing at our community ponds. And that information will be updated as soon as those ponds are located. So it's almost within an hour, when a pond's been stocked.
Ladies and gentlemen, over in the chat, I just placed a link to our family and community fishing programs, where to fish and community pond stockings. And when you go to that link, it'll give you the city, the body of water, and the last time it was stocked with either catfish or trout. And watch closely over the next few weeks. That trout side will start updating as to when the last stocking of trout was there. It'll also tell you which ponds receive trout in our family and community fishing program ponds and which ones don't. Clint, excuse me. Are there any special regulations for the family and community program ponds when it comes to the trout?
With the trout, we have a statewide limit, which is 5. There is no size restriction on those trout because they're all coming from the Mammoth Springs Jim Hinkle facility, and they're usually pretty uniform, catchable size, and actually ready for cooking or skillet. Anywhere from 12, 13 inches. The only regulations that can be out there on our locations, we have some locations that have 16 and under for youth or 65 and above. But that's only a couple of locations that if you go to the webpage, you'll see that one red asterisk on maybe a couple, maybe 3 ponds total for the state. But as far as I say almost 98% of our locations, they're open to the general public. And if you're 16 and under, you don't need a license nor a trout stamp. But if you're 16, now if you're 15 and below, but if you're 16 and older, you must have a valid fishing license. And if you're going to keep the trout, because you may be fishing for brim or catfish and catch a trout, if you're going to keep that trout, you must have a valid trout stamp, which is accessible at any Walmart, someplace like that, or you can actually do it online on your phone. If you go to our agfc.com/fishing, and you can get all your information and have all your tools that you need as far as knowledge and your licenses, because you don't want to be out there fishing without proper license and our enforcement come up on you when you least expect it.
Thank you much, Clint. Thank you much. Steve, you want to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself right quick?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, wonderful. My technical skills as well as my fishing skills are about the same. They're on an even scale. So just so a little bit about me. I live in Conway. I've got, I kind of work part-time. I'm working my way towards retirement as a physical therapist. And I've been trout fishing for just a couple of years. And as you mentioned, I've recently gotten connected with the Mayfly Project and absolutely fell in love with the mission and the mentorship and just being around like-minded individuals that want to just help out and make a difference to these kids that come through and need someone to give them a helping hand. So that's kind of my story, my fishing expertise. If you tuned in order to catch pearls of wisdom from me, you're not going to find much except that be persistent and listen to guys like the other guys on this panel here, and they'll steer you right.
Tell me something, Steve. You're fishing for trout. What is it you have the most experience in?
Right now, I'm fly fishing. I've done a few guided trips early on that we did some drift fishing like on the White River, and I've had a really good time spin casting with zig jigs, and that's been a lot of fun. Just reeling jigs over structure and waiting for the strike. So that's been a real plus for me. Now the ponds, I got a feeling that if you really want to catch fish, you do everything from dropping corn to shrimp to trout eggs. Of course, you've always got the trout magnet option there, and just see what you can pull out.
There you go. Jeff, what's your experience in it?
Well, are you talking about the family fishing area?
That or just catching trout out of a pond? I know you've been with us on a few media days and what have you out there assisting people catching trout, and I saw them doing pretty good with your assistance. What was your secrets?
Let me tell you just a real quick story. I love helping in this area because when I was 13 years old, my father and I had no idea how to catch a trout. And I showed up at this pond. It was a stocked area in Pennsylvania, and someone helped me catch one. And it changed everything about my future, right? And so I love sharing on how to do it because it's not difficult. It doesn't take a ton of skill, although there's some skill involved. But if you take the right equipment, you can catch trout anywhere in the country. And so what we did after years of learning how to catch trout, we made the trout magnet. And the trout magnet is a really good system, especially for catching stocked fish. It can be a very easy system. And the reason we made that system was just for us first. We didn't start it as a business. Was so I could catch a fish and let it go and somebody else could catch it too. And so the trout magnet system, which I'll talk about here in a second, is really easy to do that. But here, let me give you some real quick tips of what will help you catch fish, especially if you're going to go to one of these ponds. And I've been to a lot of them here in Searcy. I've been to the one in Little Rock. I was Wild Man a couple times and done those events. And every time I go there, I can tell there's one or two things that could change completely whether or not you catch fish. And at the top of that list, is your line diameter, right? It's the numero uno. I could take a cheap pole and a cheap reel, but if I've got 10 or 12 pound test in that rod, I'm gonna have a hard time even catching those stock trout. A trout's number one source for finding its food and what's not food and what's real and not real are its eyes. On the Little Red River, we fish nearly every day. They see you getting out of the car. You know, they've got some good eyesight. Oh, here comes old Jeff again, you know, and so they can see you. So you've got to downsize that line. We use 2 pound line almost exclusively, 4 pound max. If you know anything about Arkansas history, the world record was caught on the Little Red River back in 1993, a 40 pound brown trout, 40 pounds, 4 ounces. It was caught on 4 pound test. I don't think that fish would have fed on that jig when it was caught on a jig too, if he would have used 6 or 8 pound test. Would have seen the line. It wouldn't have fallen naturally. It wouldn't have eaten the jig. So first thing is use light line. The second thing is use small things, very small lures. The trout magnet, as you can see right here, is a very small jig that just falls flat. We fish this product on 2 pound test under a little float. It's almost like you're brim fishing. But if you're going to use anything, make sure they're small, like these little crankbaits, especially in these little ponds, little countdown rapalas and jerk baits and things like that. You know, those are the things that will definitely get hit more than others. Your rod and reel, it's better to have a spinning reel, but it really doesn't matter if you're going to go to these places. I've helped kids catch them on Zebcos with even adding just a leader material to the end. If they've got heavy line, add some, you know, real light line, or even get some fluorocarbon, little fly fishing tippet, and tie about 12 or 18 inches on there. If you go and YouTube how to trout magnet fish, you'll get all those videos on how to tie this line on there. But use small things. If you're going to use bait, a size 10 to 12 hook. I know that sounds small, but that's what trout have to have for that bait to look natural. And there's little power baits, there's worms. You can use a little bit of everything, but if you use the light line, you'll trick them. And that's the key to this whole thing, is using light line where they can't see what you're doing. And even these stockfish, it'll blow your mind how quickly they'll adapt, and they'll go, uh-oh, there's things that are safe and there's things that are dangerous. And so you have to get a little bit stealthy. Even after a few days in these local ponds, the trout gets educated pretty quick. And I think I would too if I got yanked out, or my buddy got yanked out real quick with everything that was thrown in. And so just use small stuff. Are there anything that I'm missing there, Clint? Anything that I think that I should be talking about to help them catch trout?
I think you hit it all, brother. Sounds good.
All right, small stuff. That's the key. And line, number one, use light line, and it'll help you catch a whole lot more. Little rooster tails and spinners, you know, work great in these ponds. But just remember to use small stuff on light line. You're like, well, what if I lose the fish? Well, if a 40-pound brown trout was caught on 4-pound test, I think we're probably pretty safe in most of the state catching trout. And I've caught so many fish, you know, 10 to 20 pounds on 2-pound test. You just got to set your drag and play them. And these small ponds and small little, impoundments that they're putting these trout in, use a net to net it. What we do with the trout magnet is it hooks on the nose every time. Just wet your hand. Just, do what you can. If you're not going to keep them, pop that lure out, put it right back in, and he'll be safe. These trout are actually a little more durable than what people would think. And Clint can attest to this. They're sometimes dropped off the bridges into the water, and they're pretty hardy fish. They're a little more hardy than what most people would think. You just can't touch their gills. That's number one. If you reach in behind that gill plate and touch that gill, that trout is going to have a problem, and you can't squeeze it too hard. You do those two things, and you're going to hurt. If not, be gentle with it and put it back. If not, you can do what I do. I eat them, Clint. I eat them, buddy. I like the trout. I mean, you just got to know how to clean them and how to cook them. And there's some things on YouTube as well that we've done, how to cook a trout, that I promise if you try it, you'll be keeping them every time you go.
And Miss Tara just added a link on there for the AGFC Nature Center. And it too has recipes on it for trout and some of the methods to catch them as well. Jeff, I agree with you on using the smaller line and what have you. What is your suggestion? Now, I look at minimum about a 24-inch leader line a lot of times to keep it away from that larger diameter line. What's your suggestion on that?
Well, here's what I say on these small, it depends how far you're casting. If I'm going to cast in these big bodies of water, I want main line 4-pound test or smaller, because it's not just that last 24 inches. It's how far you can cast with a little lure. So we
Right.
use our test on the main line. So I'll put this whole spool of line on my whole reel, and then I'll do a 12 to 24 inch leader of clear line. If you're fishing like Rock Creek or something like that, where you don't have to cast very far, then you could take a little leader of this material and tie 24 inches on it there and use your heavier line, and it'll be where the trout can't see it. It's that last little bit. But what you have to realize is, if the line is heavy, you can't cast a trout magnet. We catch so many fish on this lure. I mean, I've had years that I've caught over 10,000 trout in one boat on this lure alone, and nothing else, especially that color, that pink color. But if I fish this with 10-pound test on the Little Red River, I would struggle to catch a handful of fish a day. But when you put this on, and we even go as far as putting a fluorocarbon leader on that system, your numbers go through the roof. The lure falls more naturally. I can cast it further. So your leader's good in small bodies of water, but if you've got to cast a long way, use 4-pound test for the whole thing. And if you want to even go down from there, you can go down to a 2-pound leader. We tie what's called a triple surgeon knot. And like I said, go to Trout Magnet and go just search Trout Magnet system, and you'll see you just put those two lines together, and then you granny knot it 3 times and tighten it on the 3rd time, and those two lines are tied together with one knot. Now, it's a pretty bumpy knot. Fly fishermen not necessarily like it, but if you're using lures, it doesn't affect the action of the lure at all, and it's very easy to tie.
Very good. And he mentioned the fluorocarbon on that. Ladies and gentlemen, like he said, trout are very visual feeders, and using just regular monofilament line, a lot of times it'll reflect that sunlight, that light, where those fish can see that monofilament line. Going to a fluorocarbon like that there at the end or throughout the entire system, it allows that fluorocarbon allows that light to pass through without reflection. So that helps make it even more invisible.
That's very well said. And most people don't know that, because the difference between this fluorocarbon right here, it's just not clear line. It's completely invisible in water. And the things you were just talking about there, how it reflects light, this has a refraction index, which means it reflects light. Monofilament does. Fluorocarbon does not. Someone asked me the other day, if I drove up to the dam, especially the clearest water in the river, and I didn't have this, what I would do. I would drive back home. And that's not a joke. I would drive back home. Certain parts of the water that aren't as clear might not be as significant, but if I'm fishing at the dam, especially on Greer's Ferry or Bull Shoals, any of those dams where I'm right where the water's clearest, this is the game changer with any lure you're going to fish. If you're fishing fast crankbaits or bigger jigs, those types of things might not be as significant, but when you're drifting something really slow or bait, this right here makes a big difference. And that was very well said, because most people don't know that this doesn't reflect light. This does. And that's the big difference between the two.
Clint, is there any other methods you want to talk about? Any particular baits? I mean, I think Jeff covered the trout magnet pretty
Hey,
thorough.
I tell you what, having Jeff on your back, you definitely learn all the trout magnet lures. But when I was growing up, we used hominy corn, because if you got hungry, you could eat your bait too. but my dad was also crazy about the rooster tails, and the super dupers was his lure.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
They're great lures, but I've got to admit, not just pushing his lure or any of them, but a trout magnet and our local community ponds, fish curricula that you guys are talking about, you can't go wrong with it. And that experience, especially with children, that's one of the main things that we focused on. You get the children out there on these pretty days, in Arkansas now, it can be 70 degrees today, and by Saturday it's 50. And you're out there catching trout, having a great time. So having all the tools and the knowledge that are out there. And one thing that Jeff hit, he almost could do the show by himself. You can YouTube how to catch anything. And you're going to hear the same thing from the guys out there who are the best at it. So that's what I can really add to it, is just get out there fishing and stay regular with it, stay active with it.
Very good. Now I'm going to cover a couple other things. Steve was talking about spin cast and spinning types of equipment, what have you, and stuff like that. When it comes to some of the other baits like that, I've had good success catching trout also on just using regular earthworms or red worms. inside these family community fishing ponds, although trout's going to be stocked during the winter months, there's other species of fish in there as well. So you can wind up with you a little bit of smorgasbord or a variety of fish by changing up these baits some as well. The trout magnet does well, especially if that body of water is connected to a creek somewhere where maybe some property got in, or some ill-advised local fisherman might have placed them in there accidentally on purpose even.
Yeah.
But they work well for that as well. Another type of bait that not a lot of people that fish for trout heavily prefer, but things like power baits, the power eggs and stuff like that, they work well. The one thing I look at it as is these trout that are being stocked out there come off a hatchery where they've been fed pelletized food. And that's usually a lot of times the same shapes of what they're going to see inside these power eggs and such, or even the marshmallow form of them. So those baits right there can work well also. Also, like everybody's mentioned already, you want to kind of go small when you're selecting your hook. You're talking about a number 8 or number 10 size hook a lot of times on catching these trout. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with hook sizing, the bigger the number on the hook, the smaller the size of the hook until you get into the alt series. So using a number 8 or number 10, you go to a number 12 and you tie enough of those on, you'll always be having cross-eyed before you're done. Clint, we put these trout in there as put and take trout, correct?
Yes, we definitely want to encourage people to catch and take the fish home, because with these fish being stocked monthly from November until February, there are plenty of fish out there. And one of the big indicators is our tag promo, but one of the greatest indicators that the fish are being caught, and that's what we want to promote, is that when the water gets over 55, 65, 70 degrees in the spring and summer, I've only seen very few trout that sustain that long without getting caught. So you've got some naive fish out there that they're hungry and they're ready to bite. And that's what we kind of promote. You know, a lot of guys, like, you know, a lot of us will practice catch and release. But there are a lot of people, especially with the economy, with the price of everything at the grocery store. If I can go out there with 5 people, that's 25 trout. Go price trout or catfish in the stores, and you'll be, like Jeff said, you take them home and eat them. I promise you.
There is a variety of ways to prepare them things too. It's just not like a lot of Arkansans think catfish should be done. I mean, to me, even I think a good piece of catfish or a good piece of crappie has been rolled around the cornmeal and let swim in the hot grease for a while. These trout, there's so many different ways that you can cook them to make it, give them a different taste or texture that be palatable to just about anybody.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'm going to tell you, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat. Don't be bashful about it. If you want to know anything about it that we haven't covered, please let us know.
Now, if I can interject for a second.
Go right ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I happened just to do a little field work the other day, and I was at the pond at Conway, and there were several people fishing, and they were throwing worms and crickets, I think. Old boy told me, he said just last week, people he was fishing with pulled out a couple of trout, and this is right after a hard summer. So there are trout still in there, even this long after the last stocking.
The fish get big, but pretty resilient, and a lot of them can adapt. The thing about the trout is, ladies and gentlemen, and the main reason why Clint said they'll stop stocking them in around February. Anything above 70 degrees, those trout start dying as far as water temperature goes. They love that cold water. They love the high oxygen that cold water will hold. Trout are a high oxygen fish, and they need it. They're high energy fish as well. I'm sure anybody who's fished for trout can attest. Ounce for ounce, about the only other fish that'll fight harder than a trout is going to be a bluegill or red-eared sunfish. And that's just because those little species can tend to be mean a little bit when it comes to biting on the hook. But them trout will give it all they have when you're fighting them in. You guys have anything else you'd like to add to what's already been said?
I would just throw one thing in real quick while it's on my mind. We were talking about different rod and reel tactics or different rod and reel setups. One of the things, if you have the ability, if you can get a micro cast, that's a really, really small rod and reel, like a 4-foot rod. And I mean, just very, very, very small reel. A lot of people ask, what is the attraction of fishing? Sure, the eating is great, but me, it's something about when you cast out and you hit that tug and you set it with a micro cast rod and reel throwing 2-pound test, that trout or brim will give you all you want. And that's when the trash talking begins. You know, if I go fishing with Jeff or Tara or anybody out there, Steve, if I hit him, oh, I'm looking at you going, what's wrong with you? You want to touch my poles? But the thrill of catching the fish and the success of hitting it and getting it landed is great. So if you guys can actually get out there and maybe get you a micro cast with some 2-pound tests and whatever bait you want to use, you know, you can keep it really, really easy with corn, marshmallows, cocoa size marshmallows, or you can buy lures. Just get out there and enjoy the opportunity, because there are a lot of people that when we say we stock these locations, think that try to have to be in crystal clear water coming off of Niagara Falls or someplace like that, or some crystal pristine creek. No, we can stock these local community ponds when the temperature is okay, and you can enjoy this statewide. I mean, we're stocking trout from Fort Smith all the way down to Texarkana, over toward Pine Bluff and Little Rock area and on up. So when the temperature is conducive for stocking, we can do it. And you can enjoy these trout statewide. And like you said earlier, if you go to our location on our webpage, if you go to the part where it says fishing locations, if you click the name of the location, it'll give you direct GPS coordinates to it. So we made it real easy that you guys can get your license, get the knowledge, and have the exact location to a location near you. So get out there and enjoy yourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we've missed anything you'd like to know about, please let us know. Miss Tara, have you seen anything come up in the chat?
I have not. I have posted several of our trout videos. And if you want to save those links for later, there's 3 little dots in the chat box that if you click on will give you the option to save the chat, or you can go to AGFC virtualnaturecenter.com and find the videos.
Mr. JJ, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
What happened?
Talking to me about these tailgaters that you're talking about.
Okay, so one other thing that we are able to do here in Arkansas during the cooler winter months, typically people think about the Little Red River and the White River for their trout fishing opportunities. And we bring these opportunities down into our densely populated areas like Little Rock and Fort Smith. But there's also opportunities in the tailwaters on the Ouachita and the Little Missouri River that we take advantage of during the winter months, and we actually do some stockings in those. So if you're from Hot Springs area or Texarkana, you know, try your hand at some of these locations in these towns, but, you know, take advantage of being able to go to some of these tailwaters and fish in some moving water as well. So that's an opportunity that Game and Fish is able to provide in the winter months.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to place one more final call out there for questions, comments, concerns, anything. guys, it looks like that's about it then. I do want to thank our panelists, Steve, Jeff, Clint, for joining us. Thank you, JJ, for stepping in there at the end and helping us bring it home. Thank you, Miss Tara, for managing the chat and admitting the people in. I appreciate y'all coming out and spending time with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing was recorded. So Miss Tara will get with y'all through email eventually and get y'all a copy of the recording out there. The way if you missed anything or want to revisit something during this, you can go back and rewatch. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and good night.
I think that's it.